Hi, I'm Carolyn, and I just recorded an episode with Kim. It was great fun, and I'd love it if you could listen.
Welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here. You are going to be so happy you're here. I'm Kim Sorrelle. I get to write, I get to speak, I get to do so many fun things in life. But my favorite thing to do by far is to meet people. And I get to meet some of the coolest people ever. Today, I have a woman who I can't believe her whole life has fit into just as many years as she's lived because she has done so many things. She's trained as a microbiologist, I believe it was her schooling. And then she taught that. She's written about it. She's written, I think, 15 books or something like that. There are very few people in the world that can ever write cross genres in the book world. And she's one of them. And she does it successfully and wonderfully. And I just have been so excited to talk to her. Carolyn, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Kim. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I am so happy that you're here. So we're going to dive into a bunch of stuff that you've done and are doing, but I'd like to start with people really getting to know you. So I'd love to hear about 8-year-old Carolyn.
8 year old. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, when I was eight, I was living in Canada, in Brantford, Ontario. And I was at that time the eldest of four children. After that, my sister was born, but at that point, there was just four of us. And my dad actually got invited to move to Iowa, and that was all very interesting because he was born in the Belgian Congo. And because of that, America said, no, you can't come in. And so my mother became the head of household, and we moved to Iowa. And I lived there for about 10 years. I went to high school there, and then we moved to England. So, yeah, been around a bit.
Yes, yes, you have. Yeah, you have. Well, and your mom was expecting you, right? When they moved to Canada, is that correct?
When they moved to Canada, yes, yes. My
Yeah.
parents both grew up in the Netherlands. And at the end of World War II, a lot of the Netherlands had been bombed flat. And so there weren't that many houses. When young people wanted to get married in those days, they told them that they could not have a home, an apartment, unless their ages, when added together, equal 65.
Wow.
Or they have a child. Well, my parents didn't have a child and their ages did not equal 65, and that was a long way off. A lot of young people who got married either kept living with their own parents and didn't live together, or maybe they would live in one or other parent's house. That wasn't something my parents wanted to do. The Dutch government told the young people that they would pay them a certain minimal amount based on the taxes they paid the year before to move. They could either move to Australia or South Africa or Canada or America. My parents didn't want to go to South Africa because they felt that it was too violent. They didn't want to go to Australia because it was too far away. They wanted to come to America, but again, my dad's citizenship, or rather his birth certificate, meant they couldn't. So they moved to Canada, where they landed with $30, not speaking English, with no job, and yeah, and yet they made it. Amazing.
Wow. Yeah, it is. Those stories always amaze me. Always amaze me. Because there's people that if they're on their last $30 from their paycheck, they're like whining, complaining, and what am I going to do? But they've got a place to live and a car to drive, or whatever, to land somewhere, not knowing the language and not knowing the culture, not knowing the country, not knowing anything, and with this tiny little bit of money and expect to eat and have a place to live. And here you're on the way. And so they had to work quickly to figure all of that out. I can't imagine being in that position that you have to be so brave for one thing and creative and just kind of go for it. And so good for them. I mean, is that it sounds like to me in reading about you and listening to you and reading your stuff, that kind of rubbed off on you. Like, you've had a pretty brave life.
Well, thank you. Everybody has challenges in their life, and they have choices on how they deal with those. And I would am fortunate enough to have had, or have still, a supportive mother. I had a supportive father before he passed. And I have a wonderful husband and beautiful children, and so, and my church family is great, and so I've had a lot of support. And so even though there have been challenges, everybody has those in life, I've been very supported. I don't know how I would have done without support. I guess we don't know that, do we? We aren't
Right.
given to know the what ifs.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, because this is the road you're on.
this
So
is it.
this is it. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in school, when you were in school, like, did you enjoy school and were you have lots of friends running around the neighborhood kind of thing? Or what was that like growing up for you?
Um, I had a group of friends. I've never been one who deals well with big crowds, which is very strange because I do enjoy public speaking. But I never had a big group of friends. I had a group of 5 friends in high school who I still go and see once in a while, so that's amazing.
Mhm.
In grade school, I don't actually remember. Well, there were a couple friends before we moved to America, and then once we moved to America, that was tough because my teacher had warned the class before I came there. My friend eventually told me that there was a girl coming who was from Canada, so she would talk weird and she would act weird.
Oh,
It's not great.
what a
So of
great
course,
welcome to the school.
yes, so of course the
Yeah.
fourth grade kids didn't really want to know this weirdo. So
Oh,
that was a little tough. And it wasn't until I got to seventh grade where the kids hadn't been pre-warned that I found it easier to make friends.
yeah. Oh my goodness. What a thing for a teacher to say. Yeah,
I
not the
know.
right thing. Yeah, yeah.
She was young. What do you do?
Right, 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 right. I'm sure, yes. Hopefully she never said that again about any other kid.
Who
But
knows?
yeah. So did you know, like, did you always like to write? Did you know what you wanted to do? Did you always love science? What were you thinking when you were a kid, what you were going to grow up and be?
Well, I wanted to be a ballerina.
Oh, yeah.
And so
And a princess or just a ballerina?
just a ballerina.
Okay.
Yeah, well, first of all, it was a professional skater because I lived in Canada and I had figure skating lessons, but then we moved to Iowa and that stopped. And then I decided, oh, I'll be a ballerina. So I actually did take ballet classes twice a week. I got into the local ballet company. And so that was pretty much what I did. I did it several hours every day. I was either practicing or at rehearsals. And my
Oh,
best friend and I actually both did that. And so I thought, well, I would be a ballerina, but actually, well, I wasn't talented enough.
oh,
I mean, you can practice all you like, but
yeah.
so so then my mom and dad said, you should go to college because ballerinas can't dance for their whole life. They have to stop at a certain age. So why don't you go to college for after that? And so I did. So I actually graduated from high school when I was 16.
Mm,
And the reason was because I'd taken all the classes I was interested in, and I didn't really want to. I was doing too much ballet to do gym, so I
yeah.
didn't do gym. So I filled up classes, all my class time with academic things. And so I went to community college when I was 16 and became very intrigued with biology by that time. I
Mm.
did not want to be a scientist because scientists do not wear fashionable clothing, they wear lab coats. Okay, I was 16.
Yes. Well, and ballerinas get to wear really cool outfits.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're
So,
used to cool outfits. Yeah.
by the time I was 18, I had decided, well, I would rather be a physician. And so I went and interviewed at a medical school where they told me, when you graduate, come back. And they actually did contact me. But my parents moved to England.
Mm.
And my dad gave me an offer. He said, "You can either come to England with us, in which case I will pay for college, or you can stay in America, in which case you're on your own."
Oh,
So,
oh,
having been given that offer at 18,
yes.
I chose to go to England.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, I can see. Yep. I think
yeah,
most people would. Yes, that's good.
yep.
Yeah.
And so I went to a medical school nearby in England, and I told them I'd like to, go there. And they said, "Go back to your own country." And so, what was I supposed to do? So I went to the university that was down the road from my parents, and there they were offering a course in microbiology and virology. And I always thought viruses were the coolest thing ever. I know that there are not many people who think that, but you see, they are not alive, but you can kill them. So how does that work? I mean, that's so cool. So I was like, oh, if I can learn about viruses. And so I decided to do that course. And in England, the undergraduate education is very different from in America. You only do what you are majoring in. In other
Mm.
words, when I asked them if I could also take a class in Spanish, they laughed at me. You
Oh,
only do microbiology and virology. I mean,
oh,
I was allowed to do math for scientists, but yeah, pretty much you only learn what you're learning. And so that's what I did. And so I graduated with microbiology and virology. And yeah, I don't even know how we got here. Anyway,
yeah.
so,
Where did it take you? What was your first step out of college?
you know, um, well, the first year of college, actually, the first day of college, I had decided that I wanted to know if God existed.
Mm.
And I noticed that on the campus they had a chaplaincy. So I figured I would go there and I would give God one last chance if he existed to show himself. I did go to the chaplaincy, and there I met a man who I wrote in my diary, believe it or not, I met a real drip today. He, he invited me to his Bible study group uh, and to the chaplaincy services on Sundays where I did go. I went to those services for 5 weeks, and I heard the pastor preach on the Ten Commandments. And every time he said, "You can't do this," and I was like, "Yeah, that's real in my life. I can't, no matter how hard I try, I cannot be good." In fact, I was talking with my grandson about how when I was a kid, I always wanted to somehow be good enough so I wouldn't get spanked on my birthday, but I was so excited that I was
Oh,
always naughty and I always got spanked. Anyway,
oh.
so this is my life. So when he said, that's why Jesus came, I was like, oh, that's the first time I've heard religion make sense. This is
Mm.
logical. This makes sense. And so after 5 weeks, I decided that I would do as he kept encouraging us to do and give my life to Jesus. Um,
Wow.
and so, I don't know, several months later, my Bible study leader, the first guy I met, the drip, asked me out. And by then I decided he was okay.
He wasn't a trip after all.
No, no, he wasn't. And we got married right after college, 2 weeks after college. We got married.
Wow. Yeah.
And then he went to seminary at Oxford, and I began doing research in multiple sclerosis there.
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
but yeah, despite being a biologist, I didn't seem to know how to stop myself from becoming pregnant, and so even though my supervisor then offered that I do a PhD with him, I did not. I had my first child instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't actually start on my graduate work until after my third child went to nursery school.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah. But then you did it, which is amazing because it
I
can
did.
be hard to go back and do that. So good for you that you did.
I
And
did. I did. I did a master's in medical microbiology, and then I did a doctorate in immunopharmacology which is the effect of drugs on allergies. But basically, it was because the immune system is like the other side of the war from bacteria and viruses. We inside us we could have a little war going on between our immune system and the germs, and I wanted to know about both sides of the war.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
So
that's so
that's what I
interesting.
that's what I
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Wow. Wow. And that could not have been an easy time though, to be going back to study with little ones. And I don't know, just balancing life in general can be difficult, but then working on graduate degrees at the same time, that couldn't have been an easy time. I can't imagine.
When you're young, you have a lot more energy than when you're old.
This is
when,
true.
when I look back at it, I think, how did I do that?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then I just did it.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so true. Like my kids were all born in the 80s. And to me, the 80s are a blur. They're just a blur. I can't tell you the music. I really can't tell you anything about the 80s
Mm,
because there's so much work. And
yeah.
while starting a business, while doing all the other stuff that you do. And so somehow it does, it just gets done. Somehow you do it. And not that you want to repeat it, but it's done. So it's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think especially when I think about when I was doing my doctorate, because I was working full time and I was doing the doctorate, and then my husband got a job in Virginia, so he wasn't even there.
Mm.
And I had two extra kids living in the house. I didn't just have my own birth three, but I had a child who was abused that we'd taken in, and also we had an exchange student. So all of them living with us,
Mm.
and the house was on the market. So before I left for work every morning, the house had to be clean and tidy,
Oh my.
and five kids in the house, and no husband because he was in another state, and
Yeah.
I'm preparing for my doctoral exams. And I think back and I'm like, how did I survive?
No kidding. No
But
kidding.
well, actually, I found the best, a great tip, maybe others can use it, is before I left for work every morning, I would write a list of jobs and leave them on the kitchen table. And each child had to do two jobs.
Oh,
And it was
nice.
great because you know what? By the time I got home, there was very little housework to do.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
And because I wasn't telling them, it was on a piece of paper, they didn't argue with me.
Oh, that's nice. That is a great tip.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. I'll be passing that tip along to people I know for sure.
it
Wish I would
worked.
have known that back then. That's how that works. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. So I have a question for you. So science and Jesus, for whatever reason that that I don't understand personally, there's like this conflict
Mm,
between science and God. And I always think, well, God created it, so how can the conflict exist? But yet there is one, right?
mm,
Like I have a son who's a doctor, and he when he went away to school after growing up in a Christian home, he's like, "Well, I'm not so sure that there really is a God because I'm learning this and this and this and this," and it somehow to him contradicted the existence of God. And
mm,
so I'd love to hear your take on that and how it's affected you and your studies.
mm. Yeah, for me, I have found that what I know about cells and DNA makes me praise God. And I have a friend who's an astronomer, and he has the same experience. I mean, this is so incredible. And, just because we know how he did it doesn't mean he didn't do it. And I think
Mm.
that's where people get a little confused. They're like, oh, well, we figured out how. Not that we have, but, pretend we have. Um, it doesn't mean he didn't do it. Just because we know how a painter painted a painting doesn't mean he didn't paint it. And
Mm.
so, that I guess that's a simplified way of answering. I have never found that my faith has been challenged by science. Rather, I found that that it's been supported by it.
Mm.
Now I do have friends who are young Earth creationists. I am not, and I can see where that would be confusing for them. And personally, I think that the way you interpret Genesis, if you interpret it as it was written rather than as a scientific textbook, which I don't think it is, then there's no problem. But if you start putting more, if you start saying, oh, you can't be a believer unless you believe that the world was created in 6 days. Actually, Jesus doesn't say that. Then you can run into difficulties, and then there can be then science can prove challenging. And so I
Mm.
think
Yeah.
I think it's not so much faith in science; it's more the interpretation of
Yeah.
Christianity that some people cling to, and
Yeah.
that's okay. That's their choice. It's not the choice I made.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That's so interesting. I have a friend who wrote a book several years ago that was pretty controversial at the time, and but really it centered around what would shake your faith. You know,
Mm,
like if you found out Mary wasn't a virgin, would you go, well, then there is no God? You know, like, or if you
yeah.
found out that the earth is only this many years, that the earth is actually this many years old, or whatever, would that shake your faith? Would you go, well, then there is no God?
Mm,
And I found that very interesting because yeah, I mean, I think if you put a bunch of Christians in a room, people that are call themselves a Christian in a room, you're going to get a lot of differing views about a lot of different things. When it comes to the world, when it comes to interpretations of the Bible, when it comes to all of it and any of it, science, anything, you're going to get different views, but they all believe in Jesus. They all believe in God. And that to me is the only thing that's really important. The other stuff, however things happen, they happen. However long it's been, whatever it is, it is. To me,
mm,
God is just so much bigger than we realize and so much greater than we realize than we give him credit for, that sometimes we want to have this box around him and say,
yeah.
well, everything about everything has got to fit in this box, and anything outside the box just can't be true. And it's like, well, why not just let God be God and your faith be your faith and
Yeah.
make it
Well,
simple.
well, I mean, as for me, as somebody who is a scientist and who is interested in truth, I
Mm-hmm.
do want to know if things are true. And so, but it means doing some deep analysis of the scriptures and reading them as they are, and listening to theologians, and thinking about what they say. And I have found that very helpful. Of course, my husband did major in theology at Oxford, so he has been a tremendous help to me, but he's not the only one. There are a lot of people that I've turned to try and understand, and that's been very helpful.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that because it is. I love to like the original text. What were the words that were actually used, and what was the
Mm,
actual meaning, and to really dive into uh, not just this particular translation or how this particular translation is translated, but what is the original and what was meant by it, and what did Jesus actually say, and what was actually said in Genesis, or like there's so much uh, that you can dive into, and so many incredible resources out there to find out so much. Um, and or you can be that person that just has an NIV and that's it, and you're happy with it, and that's cool for you. So kind of like whatever works for people works for people. But with your mind, of course, you want to know. You want to know.
mm,
Well, let's dive in and let's get deeper, and
yeah.
where's the real truth, and where does it start, and whatever. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
something I found tremendously helpful was my husband and I went to um, a tour of Israel led by a group called Shoresh. And they come out of Christchurch, Jerusalem. And and they are very helpful because they explain the Bible from the point of view of the Jewish faith. And
Mm.
it is so helpful to actually understand, oh, what was it that was being said here, or there? And yeah, that's been very helpful to me,
Yeah.
to
Oh,
understand it on a much deeper level.
yeah. They had to be fascinating, that
That
trip.
was amazing. Absolutely
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to Israel a couple of years ago and loved it.
Mhm.
And but felt like I did not have enough time. Like I was with a group
Mhm.
and it was a group that, okay, this is, the whatever, and then this is the whatever, and this is the whatever. And but it was like you're there for a minute, you're there for a minute, you're there for a minute, instead of being able to sit and reflect and open a Bible and read about it, or open something and read about it and really spend time. And so
Mhm.
if I went back again, that's what I do. I'd go on my own time, and when I go back again, and just sit with it, because I
Mhm.
think, I don't know, it's to get the richness of it, to be in the place where Jesus walked, to be in the place where so many things happened. In fact, I went to Egypt after Israel. I went to Jordan and then went to Egypt, and I happened to walk into it was the Coptic Christian area of Cairo, and all these churches. And I walked into this one church, and you could go downstairs. The churches were beautiful, ornate, just really cool. And you could go downstairs. I just happened to see a sign, like had no idea. And so I was with two friends, and we walked downstairs, and there's a big plaque in it, and there's glass, and then this piece of dirt uh, behind the glass. And it said that that's where Jesus and Mary and Joseph were when they fled to Egypt. And I went, oh, I wonder if it is that spot. That's very interesting, because
Mhm.
obviously they were there. So who knows? That could be the spot. But I didn't even think about it. But what a cool thing
Mhm.
to even think about while being in Egypt, I guess. I don't
Yeah.
know, for whatever reason. It was just
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah. But over there, as you know, there's so many things
Mhm.
that you read about and read about and read about, and the stories
Yeah.
that we know. And then to actually be in the spot, in the room where it happened, as Hamlet says, is so interesting to actually
Yeah.
be there.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, one that really had an impact on me was we were there. We actually were there for a month because my husband had a sabbatical there, and we were sitting in the coffee shop, and one of the pastors who was working there at the time, now he's in England, said to us, "Do you know why?" When Jesus turned the water into wine, the Bible says his disciples now believed in him. And I was like, yeah, that's really weird. I've always thought that. Why? Okay, that was cool that he turned the water into wine, but why would that make anybody believe in him? I don't understand. And he said, yeah, he said it's because of what the Jewish people say to this day. He said, when they are going to drink wine, they say, "Blessed are you, Lord our God of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine." Maybe not those exact words. But basically, they give thanks to God for creating the fruit of the vine. So every person who drank wine at that wedding acknowledged that Jesus was God because he created it, didn't he? He
Wow.
turned the water into wine. And I was like, oh my gosh, that totally opened that scripture to me.
Yeah. Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah,
Yeah. I love stuff like that. Like,
yeah.
like when Jesus was called living waters, it happened to be during the festival of the waters, during that time, that's why water was being spoken of, and that's why he was being compared to it. And yes, just to know the history that is beneath the story is, it
It's
changes
beautiful.
everything. That is so cool. I'm so glad you shared that. That is so cool. I will never forget that. That's that. Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of places like that, really, in the
Oh
Bible
yeah.
that you kind of go, oh, okay,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But then when you read what's behind it, like why, what was happening during that time. Like even with Abraham and sacrificing his son. And,
Mm.
you can look at that and go, holy cow, who's going to say, yeah, Lord, I'll kill my son, after I waited for years and years. Yes, I'll take him and kill him. But at the time, that wasn't abnormal
Mm.
because people were sacrificing to the gods, right? And so they were planting, and if they had a good harvest, they gave the gods more so that they'd be happy, so they'd have a good harvest again. If they had a bad harvest, they gave them even more, thinking we didn't give them enough, so we got to have a good harvest. And then given them the harvest wasn't enough, so then they started sacrificing animals, and then that wasn't enough, and so they started sacrificing their firstborn. So it was something during that time that was actually happening.
Mm.
So it wasn't like like Abraham, great that you've got faith like that and that you're going to be that obedient to God. But man, don't you draw the line? But, but, but
Poor
because
kid, so traumatized.
no kidding, no kidding. And
Ah.
what's his wife going to say? Poor Sarah, like, really, you're going to
Yeah.
go home and tell her what you did? And so anyway, but to me, it makes it so much more human understanding the humanity of it in the moment, like what
Mm.
was going on during that time in
Yeah.
life in general, that it made it a thing instead of, wow, who's this dude that's going to be doing this, right? So, yeah, so
Yeah.
hearing those things to me uh just opens up a whole new world, just makes the Bible so much bigger
Mm.
and richer, deeper. And so anyway, so yeah, so thanks for sharing that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So you're a writer and you've written 15, is it 15 books? Is that right?
Mhm. Yeah.
That's a lot of books. That's a lot of books. And I've written a couple, and then there's 15, so
Mm.
you're a writer. I'm a doodler. I don't even know what it would be compared to,
Oh, you're a
but,
writer.
but you, but you've also written across genres, and which
Mm.
is so interesting because writers don't do that typically.
Mm.
They write nonfiction. This is what they write. They write,
Yeah.
fiction and romance. This is what they write. Whatever. But I, I'm sure with your brain, you don't think it's abnormal or unique or special, but it is special. Do you how does that work in your head? Like, do you think differently when you're writing something different, or how does that work for
You know,
you?
I think I'm just a rebel. When people tell me you can't do that, I'm like, oh, just watch me.
I like that. I knew I liked you.
And so when I retired, I thought, okay, what is it the Lord wants me to do now? And I thought back to all my jobs because I've had a lot of different ones. And what was the aspect of those jobs that I enjoyed the most? And I realized, oh, it was the writing. I really enjoy writing, except for patents. I don't enjoy writing those. I decided, no, never going to do that again. But but I was like, I enjoyed writing PowerPoints and talks and whatever. So I thought, okay, that's what I probably should do. And I really felt the Lord saying, write, but not really what to write. And then, the advice is you stick to one genre so you can get a following, so you can be successful. But I'm like, that's not why I'm doing it. And so I just write whatever I feel like at the time. And, I started with a book that didn't really, I didn't know anything about promotion. And so it didn't do great because I didn't realize that authors have to promote their own work and, whatever. And,
Yeah.
also when I read back, I'm like, whoa, that was obviously a first book. So I'm not even going to tell you the title. But And then I was like, okay, I'm going to write some fun books. I'm going to, because I tell my grandchildren stories. I found that from the time they were, tiny, if I told them stories, they would stop misbehaving and sit there mesmerized and listen. So I thought,
Mhm.
I'm going to write those stories down. So I wrote stories about my dog and stories about my childhood, which are just silly stories about what happened to me, like, oh, my parents told me it was disgusting to chew gum. So me and my friend thought, well, how can we get some gum? So we found it on the playground and we washed it really thoroughly and we chewed that gum. Just silly stories. And that it's just fun. And then there are that then when my father passed away, I wanted to distract my mother from grief. We all have to go through grief, and distraction isn't a bad way of dealing with it at times.
Mhm.
So I wrote down the stories that she told me while I was growing up, or told all five of us while we were growing up. And then once they were all written down, I brought it to her because I had no idea what order these things happened in or anything. And I said, "What do you think, Mom? Could this make a book?" And she said, "Well, you forgot a lot of it." And I said, "No, I didn't, but you didn't tell me." And so that became a pretty drawn out time when she told me about the more difficult things about her growing up in an occupied country.
Mhm.
And so she filled in the holes, as it were. And then it was time to, okay, now let's make the book. Instead of people reading about the story, let's have them live the story.
Mhm.
And that meant putting it into the first person so they could be a fly on the wall watching her. And also putting in the things that people would see, like how did her mother show that she was anxious? How did her father show that he was anxious? You just the physical things that people did so that you got to know the individuals. And that required sitting with her because I wanted the book to be as true as it could possibly be. And
Mhm.
then I did a lot of historical research to put things in the right order. And out of that eventually came Braveface, which
Mhm.
is the story of my mother's childhood. And when that was done, I was like, "Oh, what do I do next?" And I thought, I know, I'll write about my dad, except he's gone and I don't have any information. And so I began to look for information. And it just came out of the woodwork, and I realized God wants me to write this story. And so, and I got information. My cousin sent me 15 pages that my dad's brother had written. I found some stuff that dad had written, not that much, but a little bit. Somebody who lived in the children's home with him was in contact with me. Somebody who is a historian, well, actually, two people, historians in the village where he grew up, were in contact with me. And, my mom, when she was cleaning out her house, found letters that his father had written him. And before I knew it, I had far more information than I even needed to write a
Wow.
very true historical account of his life.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. That had to be so fun and so interesting.
Very interesting. And, the things that I did as a scientist, the research and the analysis and the saying, okay, is this true? And what's the evidence? That all came into it. I could use all those same skills again.
Yeah.
And but it made for a lot of interest. And also um, I got new interests, I suppose, in psychology because as I was doing the research about my father and looked at his childhood, I was like, oh my gosh, he had attachment disorder. Oh, that explains why he behaved the way he did. Just
Mhm.
stuff like that I hadn't known because when you're a kid, your parents are your parents,
Mhm.
and you
Right.
don't actually realize, oh, they were damaged, and this
Mhm.
is why they behaved like they did.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. I mean, you don't really think about their childhoods until you're much older
Yeah.
and realize, that they were kids at one point in time. And yeah,
Mhm.
and the trauma that they go through and things that they go through and makes them who they are. Every day that you
Yeah.
live leads to today.
Yep.
And that, do you ever think, man, that would have been nice to know when he was around?
Yeah, it would have. It would have been. I mean, also with my mom. I mean, there are things about her behavior that just I thought were normal, but now I realize, oh, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I mean, growing up, you don't know those things.
Mhm.
And for example, she um, taught us all to be very suspicious of anybody outside the family, and especially men. And I
Mm.
grew up terrified of men,
Oh,
which
interesting.
was pretty damaging for a young girl.
Hmm.
And, but, when I married my husband, well, he was part of the family, so he wasn't terrifying anymore.
Yeah.
And it was only when my sons became teenagers that I realized, oh, actually, men are just people. They're not really that scary.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
So,
So did your mom have just,
well, see, that
yeah.
was it. As I was doing the book with her, she told me about how um, during the war, the planes would fight over the ocean. She and her sister would sit there on the sand dunes watching the dogfights, and then
Mm.
one would spiral into the water and the other one would parachute. And if it was an Allied pilot who would parachute into the water, he would be rescued by the fishing boats, and then he would appear in her parental home.
Oh,
And then he would go to the next home and to the next home, eventually be sent back to England. Well, she was only 5. So, what
mhm.
did her father tell her? Be careful. Don't go near the men.
Right, right. Wow.
Also, about 5 to 10% of Dutch people were collaborators with the Nazis.
Oh,
So, again, and they spoke Dutch, they looked like Dutch people, but her father really drilled it into his daughters, be careful of the men. Now you see where it came from.
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah,
so when I was doing the book with her, I was like, oh, that's where that fear came from. It
yeah.
was something she was taught for survival. And I don't need that fear because, I'm not living at war and I'm not housing people from the enemy in my home. And, so,
Right.
but what she was trained in, she didn't know where it came from either. Um, so it was just very, very interesting to
Yeah.
learn that about her. You know,
Wow. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking about it, I'm sure we all have things that we don't know about our folks that
mm,
you wonder where the quirks or where the things came from. And, they came by them pretty honestly, I'm sure, because
yeah,
of things in their own life. And I always think about that with people in general is that you don't know where they came from.
yeah,
You don't know what's led to today for them. And so to just kind of give grace and
yeah,
mercy and realize not everybody's walked in your shoes, nobody else has walked in your shoes, and you don't
yeah,
know
right,
what's happened in somebody's life.
right,
So then
yeah,
the war obviously was interesting to you.
very, very, and it was really interesting to learn more about it. And to find out. Um, yeah, I'm still finding out more because after I wrote Unforgivable, people who would read it would say to me, "What was wrong with his mother?" That was my
Mm.
grandmother. And I was like, I don't know. Let's find out. So that's what I'm doing now. And it's just so engrossing to find out more and to find out which relative actually went to jail for collaborating with the enemy.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
And, which relatives went to the concentration camps and which
Mhm.
relative betrayed other people. And it's just been very engrossing to learn all that. And
Yeah, no kidding.
yeah.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Has it played a role? What kind of a role has that played in your life, learning the things that you've learned?
Um, well, I think it's made me able to understand my mother better. She lives with me now. She's 91, and having a parent live with you can be challenging because every person has quirks, including parents. And so it enables me to understand more where she's coming from.
Yeah.
For example, during the last year of the war, there was no food, not for anybody in her part of the country, because the Allies freed part of the country, but they didn't free her part because they were not of strategic importance. It was more important that they marched through to Germany than that they freed that part of the Netherlands.
Mhm.
The Allies did ask that part of the Netherlands to have all the railways go on strike, so that the Germans would no longer be able to get munitions to that part of the country.
Mm.
So they did, and it was very successful. And the Germans were very angry. So they blockaded all food and all fuel from going to that part of the country.
Wow.
By the time they realized that this was actually going to cause widespread famine, including for their own soldiers, and they lifted the blockade, the winter, one of the worst winters on record, had set in.
Mm.
And all the canals were frozen. The bridges had all been bombed.
Mm.
The railways were no longer functional. In other words, it was impossible to get food to that part of the country, and it was what was called the Hunger Winter. At the
Wow.
end of 1945, beginning of 19 no, end of 44, beginning of 45,
Wow.
and 20,000 people died of starvation. More people than that died of dysentery and TB and all the things that go with starvation. And my mom was there during that time. So
Mm.
she also got no food and, no heat. And she told me about how she was crawling through the kitchen cupboards and she found 5 grains of rice. So her
Mm.
mother boiled them, and each member of the family had 1 grain. Um,
Wow. Wow.
and she told me about when the Canadian soldiers, came down the street to declare the end of the war. She did not go downstairs, and I asked her, "Well, why not, Mom?" Because they were handing out candy bars,
Mm.
and she said, "Because I was dead."
Mm.
And I said, "What?" And she said, "I was dead. In my mind, I was dead."
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
that just, that's phenomenal to me that, she was that hungry. And actually, then 2 years after the end of the war, the Dutch government sent officials to the various schools to see which children were going to survive and which would die. This is 2 years after the war, but the kids were still so emaciated that some of them were not worth putting into a feeding program.
Wow.
And
Wow.
they looked at my mom and they said, "Not worth feeding her. She's going to
Oh.
die anyway." So she blew her cheeks up to show how
Mm.
fat she is.
Oh.
And they changed their mind and they said, "Oh, she has the will to live." So they put her in a feeding program. And yeah, like I said, she's 91.
Wow.
So, how
Wow.
does that affect her today? Well, if there's a tablespoon left of any meal, she puts it in the fridge and
Mm.
gets very stressed out if I throw it away.
Mm.
Um, she keeps bags of food in her closet in her bedroom.
Mm. Mm.
She, all my life, has had a drawer of chocolate, a hidden drawer of chocolate that we all knew where it was, but
Yeah. But she thought
you
it
know,
was, yes.
food for her is vitally important, and and I mean, an empty fridge stresses her out. Well,
Mm.
I know where that came from.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
you
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
something I hadn't known where it came from that I learned as I was doing the book with her was she has always had a low opinion of herself, and I've never understood that because she's always the most popular woman in the room. She's extremely gregarious, very outgoing, very attractive. Even at 91, she's beautiful. And I was like, what? Why does she think so little of herself? What the, why? And when she kept repeating to me, we were not of strategic importance, I
Mm.
realized that you're not important. In fact, you're so unimportant that you don't even deserve food. Really went deep within her mind.
Mm. Hmm.
And, just how damaging that was to a child who was, well, what she would have been 9, just 9 at that time.
Wow. Wow.
And, and then, of course, it was wonderful when the book came out because people were clapping for her. She walked into church, they gave her a standing ovation,
Oh,
um, and it's
I love
been
that.
really wonderful. And she said to me, "I had not, this has it's validated what I went through." That's the word she used. Yeah, it's validated me."
Wow.
And I was
Wow.
like, "That's super cool." So yeah,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. What a gift. What a gift. That is
yeah,
super cool. Yeah. Yeah. Man, it's amazing what people go through.
Mm.
And if you hadn't done that, things that you never would have known.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what a wonderful thing to do. Like, and my parents are gone, but now I'm wishing I would have spent more
Yeah.
time listening to the stories, or, like my grandpa used to tell a lot of stories, and I've always thought, why didn't I write them down? Why didn't I dive deeper, or whatever.
Mm.
And it's amazing how so much of what happened in our parents' life and our grandparents' life affect us today.
It does. Yeah.
And so, so to know those things is pretty special,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
really dive into that and know it. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
one
mean,
of your kids gonna write your story one day?
I don't know. My grandchildren are interested in writing, so who knows? Maybe.
Yeah.
Um, my policy is I try not to write about anybody who's still alive because that dead people can't take offense. But although I did write about me when I was a kid because who cares? But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When it's
but
yourself, you can get away with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
but uh, yeah. I mean, my dad's story also has been transformational in my life because I called it unforgivable. And the reason is because what was done to him was unforgivable. His mother dropped him off in a children's home, he and his brother, when he was 5 and his brother was 2. And there they were abused,
Mm,
especially my dad, because he was the one who was supposed to work to pay for both he and his brother's keep, believe it or not, at 5.
oh my
So,
word.
so he had to pick up sticks, empty trash, clean the shoes, etc. And yeah, so and then when and then halfway through the war, the soldiers came and they separated the kids in the children's home between Jews and non-Jews. Now,
Mm,
my dad and his brother had a Jewish grandfather that was Jewish enough as far as the Nazis were concerned.
mm,
So they were put in a room, and the Jewish kids were told to go to one side and the non Jews to the other side. And for some reason, they did not choose my dad and his brother, and why is revealed in the book. But my dad and his brother were put on the Gentile side. But then my dad's best friend, a girl called Katia, came running out. She escaped and asked my dad to save her. And
mm,
he said, "What can I do?" And then one of the nurses grabbed Katia and put her back in the other side.
mm,
So my dad's 3 cousins and his friend, 17 kids in total, were taken to Auschwitz, and they all died, of course.
mm,
And that had a big impact on dad. And, in my view, of course, in everybody's view, that's unforgivable, what happened there.
mm,
When he left the children's home, his mom still wouldn't let him live at home. So he had to live in a boarding school and then in a room that was unheated. And so he had many unforgivable things done to him all his life.
mhm,
Because he was abused, he thought he was unforgivable. Unfortunately, kids who are abused think they deserve it.
mhm.
And that's why I called the book Unforgivable.
Wow.
And but I really wanted to know, how did he turn out to be a decent human being? And I did find some reasons why he would have turned out to be a good man.
Mm,
But the story of the end of his life is the thing that really has had a big impact on me, because 6 months before he passed, he phoned me and he said, "Carolyn, can you just come for a week and help your mother because she's really tired from taking care of me because I've just not been feeling well." Well, that same day, my husband had been told his job was over, without warning, for no reason.
mm,
So I said, "Well, Dad, Richard doesn't have a job. We don't have a home. So, yeah, we might as well come." And he said, "Well, come live with us." So we did. We moved in with them. And as we were driving there, the Lord spoke to my heart and he said, "Your dad's going to die and you're going to be with him when he does."
mm,
So we got there and I knew what was coming. Nobody else did. So I did what I knew was important, which was to sort out their finances and to make sure that he saw the doctors he needed to see and help with their 60th wedding anniversary celebrations
Mm,
and arrange for each of my siblings to come and visit at regular intervals. And then, of course, came the diagnosis. He had pancreatic cancer.
mm,
And I had the privilege of, taking care of him during that time and, overseeing his medications and, just making sure that there were people to sit with him during the night when he got to the point where he couldn't turn over anymore, and just all the things that go with taking care of somebody who is dying.
mm,
Um, During that time as well, my husband and I, and actually the whole family, would pray for my dad at night. And he called it the wishings, and he was happy for us to do the wishings. He did tell me that he didn't believe. He told me many times. And I said, well, that's okay. And about a month before he passed, a friend of mine said, well, my prayer group has been praying for your father. And one of the people said that your father should say yes when he sees Jesus. And I was like, yeah, he doesn't believe in Jesus. Not going to happen. And she goes, tell him to say yes. I said, all right. So I went to Dad and I said to Dad, okay, when you see Jesus, you need to say yes. He says, Carolyn, I'm not going to see him. And I said, well, when you see him, you should say yes. you know, and I'm not going to see him. And I said, all right, fine. I said, if you see him, will you say yes? And he said, if I see him, I will say yes. Yeah, we're both feisty.
I like Pisces.
And and before he passed, he did see him, and I saw him say yes.
Wow.
And so 3 days before he passed, Jesus, and I was just blown away because I was like, oh my gosh, God loved him so much that he took my husband and I out of a job and out of a home. And frankly, we lost both our cars as well, and put us in that home so we could be with him and pray with him,
Mm,
you know,
mm,
until he turned to Jesus. And I'm like, that is phenomenal.
mm,
That kind of love. And I'm like, he loves all of us that much.
mm,
And that's been life changing for me. I mean, I've known Jesus since I was 18, but to have seen that, that was just mind blowing.
mm,
He loves that much.
mm,
This, and then to write Dad's story after that and to see what a very difficult life he had. But the God just never took his hand off him.
wow.
Just, yeah,
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thanks so much for sharing all that. It's oh my gosh, so encouraging and so beautiful. And I'm thinking like sometimes often when you go through something hard, it's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, like why is this happening or why all these things at once and why financial ruin, or why losing a job, why do I have to move, why all lots of whys can happen.
Mm.
And it's so beautiful when you get on the other side and you go, ah, I know why.
It was
I
worth it.
see. Yeah, and it was totally worth it.
It's worth it.
Absolutely.
And I
Wow.
mean,
Oh my God.
we don't always know why, do we? I mean,
Oh,
sometimes God will show us, and sometimes He won't.
yep.
I'm thinking
Yep.
about some other suffering that I had in my life, and it was 10 years before I realized why.
Mhm.
And and I'm sure there's other things that happen in people's lives where they don't realize this side of the
Mhm.
grave.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But God does have reasons. It's just our little pygmy brains can't can't always understand what those are.
Well, I think too, so often it's not so much what happens to us, but what we do with it.
Mm,
So, things can happen and maybe there's not a why to it. It happens because it's life and there's disease and there's,
yeah.
you know, fighting or whatever, right? Because we're human and
Mm,
it's humanity. And so there might not be a good why, but
right.
there might be something really good you can do with what happened. Have something good come out of it. I think God's so cool that way too, that the worst
Yeah.
of circumstances, there he can bring something beautiful out of it. So because he
Yeah.
loves us that much and he's that cool.
And well, it does make a difference, doesn't it? I mean, faith does. That was something the book I'm writing now that has come out through my research is there are two women in that book. Well, there are a lot of people in the book, but two that I've become aware of. Um, and each of them had a tremendous amount of loss in their lives. I mean, people dying around them. It was war, right? And they're Jewish.
Yeah, right.
um, One of them, her parents had become brethren, and so she had a faith, and she came through it with her faith intact, and still with a smile on her face, obviously tears in her eyes.
Mhm.
The other one became very resentful and turned in on herself and didn't emote to anybody eventually.
Mhm.
She had no faith. She had decided God doesn't exist a long time ago. And I'm like, could that have something to do with it? I don't know. But it seems like maybe it did. I mean, these two people had very similar lives. And I think that maybe knowing that there's a loving God, even though we have no clue why he allows things to happen that he does,
Mhm.
um, maybe that makes a difference.
Absolutely. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. It is interesting how the very same circumstances can happen to two people with two incredibly different outcomes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, who knows why? I mean, I'm sure there's psychological makeup. There's all kinds of things that
Sure.
are part of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. But a lot
Yeah.
of it too is choice, I think. Like,
Right. Yeah.
what are you going to let it destroy you? Or are you going to let it take you down? Or are you going to be resilient? I mean, those choices
Yeah.
can be difficult to make depending on your circumstances, but I don't know. Yeah, faith, I think
Yeah.
you're absolutely is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah. I have one relative where he and his wife and three children, and his wife was actually pregnant, um, were all taken to Auschwitz, and his wife gave birth in the camps, and they murdered her baby as soon as he or she was born. We don't know which the baby was, and then the wife threw herself against the electric.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually survived. He did the long march after Auschwitz, and he survived, and he was very traumatized, obviously. His first marriage broke up after that because I think he was just too messed up by then. Um, but a daughter from his next marriage, because he did get married twice after the camps, said that he always told his daughters, forgive, forgive, and then forgive.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, wow, that's incredible. For someone who has suffered like that, who lost a wife and four kids,
Mm-hmm.
and his own health and sanity for a while. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
forgive, forgive, and then forgive.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. No kidding. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Man, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing everything you've shared. It's amazing. I could talk to you and talk to you and talk to you. And I've so enjoyed it. And I know listeners have too. How can people get in touch with you? Where can they find your books?
Okay, well, I have a website. It's called ramblingruminations.com. It was named by my son because he thought it was pretty funny that mom could never stick to one topic. So it's Rambling Ruminations, RAMBLINGRUMINATIONS.com. And all my books are there, and you can find out about my life there. And I do have a blog where I write about, well, whatever I feel like, be it faith, science, grandkids, whatever.
Love that. Yeah. Yeah. So good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks again. Thanks so much for being here and for being
Thank you.
you and
Thank
doing
you
all you
for,
do.
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, and if you know somebody that would be touched by this episode, please pass it on to them. And please do go to Rambling Ruminations. It's a great website. I've been there a few times, and there's great resources on there, and her books are great. Like, and buy some and send them to people and pass them on. And It's easy to do, so just do it and you'll enjoy it, I promise. And I know there's a lot of World War II buffs. I know people that love reading things about World War II. Those books are amazing that she's written. So go to the website, do the thing, and follow Carolyn. She's amazing in every possible way. And so I want to say thank you for being with us today. And
Thank you.
until we see each other again, I pray that you keep your heart open and you live your love loud.